I love getting differing views in.
And we're getting quite a few differing views.
Which is good. It's good news, because we like diversity of opinion. Derek says, in regard to the PM and that home invasion by Greenpeace, no damage, no one was hurt. We're obsessed with property rights over human rights.
See, I don't agree with that. It's not about property. It's not about his property. It's about his home.
Phil in Rugby says, if this is the worst that protesters could have done, then we live in a pretty safe country. But then again, Andy in Dorset says the Greenpeace activists yesterday should be classed as an act of terrorism. Prison sentences should follow.
Ooh, I don't know about that either. Martin in Chislehurst says these morons have now made the Sunak private residence a target for any terrorist or anarchist. His wife, his children and staff are all now exposed. See, I can't help wondering whether they will be thinking it's a bit like when you're burgled. You never really feel happy in that home again. I wonder.
Could be a little bit like that.
Put it up for sale.
Yvonne says, absolutely outrageous. Yorkshire police heads must roll.
Well, somebody's...
I don't know if it would fall under Yorkshire Police or
whether it would be the Met or whether it's the special branch or whoever.
I mean, there should have been something.
It's still shocking that it was left so exposed.
Yeah, but anyway, keep your thoughts coming through on that. I'm glad there's a mix of them. That's good news. GBViews at gbnews.com. So
let's take a look at today's newspapers. And The Times is leading with Jeremy Hunt, claiming that Britain is stuck in a low-growth trap after official figures show the nation faces a sustained period of high interest rates.
The Telegraph says the Prime Minister is planning the biggest expansion of the private sector involvement in the NHS since the Blair era.
The Mail draws attention to those eco-activists scaling the roof of Rishi Sunak's country house without being challenged.
The Mirror says, on your bike, amid Tory MP Mel Stride urging the cash-strapped over 50s to get to work delivering takeaways.
And finally, The Star issues a warning to holidaymakers that too much sun might turn us bald.
Ooh.
Now, that's serious.
That is serious. Let's talk to writer and commentator Candice Holdsworth and political strategist and former advisor to Tony Blair, John McTernan. Good to see you both this morning. Candice, let's kick off, should we, with The Telegraph and Donald Trump, where he says the charges against him will guarantee his victory.
Yes, well, he's pleading not guilty to all these charges, which is conspiracy to defraud the US, conspiracy to disrupt an official proceeding, obstruction and conspiracy against the right to vote. I mean, those are all pretty serious. He's going to plead not guilty. And from what I've read, his defence is going to be that he genuinely believes that the election was stolen from him, though I don't know how that's going to play out in the courtroom. It's very true what you say. I think he's able to mobilise his base, and he's sort of putting the narrative out there that the justice system is being weaponised by his opponents. And I think a lot of people who support Donald Trump, because of the political partisanship in the US, will believe this, and they will believe that the other side is just trying to get their guy. From the other side, though, they believe that Donald Trump is an existential threat to democracy.
The problem is, obviously, if the key evidence is from Donald Trump's own Vice President Pence, then that complicates the idea this is some kind of Democrat plot.
Well, except, of course, Mike Pence is running against him for the presidential nomination.
But in the Republican Party, because one of Mike Pence's notes is that his contemporaneous notes was that Donald Trump said to him, "The problem with you is that you're too honest," and that sounds like it's an admission that Donald Trump knew what he was doing, trying to do was dishonest. So I think this will be. It's going to be a box office all next year. I've got no doubt Donald Trump's going to be the Republican candidate. Do you
think he'll win his way back into the White House?
I don't think he'll win his way back into the White House. I think the midterms showed the issue of abortion has shifted opinion in America against the Republican Party. I think that's the biggest danger for Donald Trump, is that the vote will be a vote on whether or not people are happy with abortion rights being taken from women. Independent votes have moved really
That's really interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
That the problem, the concept of abortion, is still right so high
so at the centre
in American politics.
Yes, yes. And I think the Democrats will go for young women who believe that abortion rights are very important to them. Because I think with what's happening with Donald Trump sort of getting a stranglehold on the Republican Party, it's all about appealing to the people who like you already, and it's not so much about
going to the middle,
wooing independent voters. You know, I mean, Michigan and Wisconsin, those two swing states, they played a key role in getting him elected in 2016, and then in 2020 he lost. So let's see what happens next.
Yeah,
only 40,000 votes were in it. Biden only won by 40,000 votes across 3 states in the Electoral College. Obviously, he won by 8 million in the general election, in the popular count, but actually it's a targeted election. 2 or 3 states are going to matter, and it's exactly where do the swing votes go, and do they want a president or a presidential candidate who's in court all the way through the presidential campaign.
Well, what's happened to US politics? It's just crazy. And then on the other side, the Bidens are now embroiled in loads of controversy. It's really terrible.
Biden isn't yet the adopted Democratic candidate.
No.
So there's still time for Meghan Markle to get in there.
Oh, Meghan Markle could still get in
Look,
there.
I love Joe Biden, but I think I'd love a Meghan Markle candidacy. That would be great.
Why great?
Are you serious or not?
I love Meghan Markle. I think.
Are you being deadly serious?
I'm being deadly serious. She's the greatest thing that's happened to the royal family since Princess Diana.
Look, in all seriousness, how can we then go from one controversial celebrity president, right, to Joe Biden, to then thinking it would be a good idea to get another hugely controversial celebrity candidate?
I just think that the idea of the first bloke being a member of the British royal family, that'd be hilarious. They'd have to have a new name, wouldn't they? First lady. What is the
first prince?
Yeah, the first
duke.
The first prince.
I mean,
But the idea of a British royal being in the White House is, you know, alarming enough.
Finally
for the
regained
Americans.
after 18. So long after 1812, we finally got it.
Politics. I mean, I feel like you need to come up in the political ranks to actually be a good
Trump
leader.
Didn't have a political
He didn't,
history.
and I thought he was so ineffective as a president.
Well, Trump is a New York Democrat. I think he's still a registered Democrat in New York.
This is where it all gets too much.
You always got to remember about him. He is a New York Democrat. That makes his politics funny when he's in the White House. He's not really a Republican.
And he was terrified, apparently, when he was in the White House. He just did not know how to work the system. He just had... You know, someone like Obama had worked his way up.
He'd been a senator. No, he'd been in the machine,
He was a bit of a bull in a china shop.
But put him in a court of law, you know, give him that platform, and he could just be campaigning.
Yes,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Let's have a look, John, at the Telegraph and the NHS trying to end this backlog by involving the private sector. Not dissimilar to what Tony Blair did.
In one sense, yes, and I welcome it. The NHS does need to have a partnership with the private sector if it's to provide the best care for all of us, whether there's a backlog, whether there's not a backlog, because Tony used the private sector in 97, 98 to cut the waiting lists.
And that was very successful.
Very, very successful, and we carried on using the private sector up until today. The thing here is the lack of detail. We set up 30 or 40 new diagnostic centres. The money was behind the promise. In the story here, it says there's going to be a dashboard, an online dashboard that shows where capacity is. So it's about managing the existing capacity more efficiently. That's absolutely right. If you want to cut the waiting list, the lesson from Tony Blair, my time in healthcare, was you have to put more money in to get the 7 million operations done. There's no way of doing this on the cheap, and that's what being danced around. I'll wait to see what the task force says in the report, and I think Will Quint's a great young health minister. But the devil, as ever, is going to be in the detail. The headline's right. I'll always say...
There was more money around, though, in Blair's time, wasn't there?
There was more money around. Look, and the reason there's no more money around is what the Financial Times called the moronic risk premium caused by the Sunak and Trust budget. But no, the thing is, you need reform, but you do need resources. You can only cut this by bringing more resources to bear. And I think the problem for the Prime Minister is he's showing action, but the raw numbers keep going up. He'll promise to bring the numbers down, and we're now in August, and the numbers are still going up.
Well, I think it's important. It looks like they're going to have to use capacity in the private sector to get the waiting list down. But, I mean, you look at what happened last week with these Rutherford cancer centres. They're privately run companies, and then they went into administration, and then the NHS can't access the machinery. And I think that's so much the story of the NHS. You know, a lot of money goes into it, but there's not enough invested in things like diagnostic machines and treatment machines. And, you know, a lot of money can be spent, but you also have to think where the money is being spent as well.
There's no joined-up thinking with any of it.
Yes.
Well,
yeah.
I was at Tony Blair's conference a couple of weeks ago, and one of the big points were being made there was we have far fewer diagnostic machines per head of population than comparable European countries. There's no doubt we need a lot of capital spent as well as revenue on staff.
Yes.
You need, if you have the technology, and then when you have it, there's such difference. In Scotland, they don't use their diagnostic machine on the weekend. In London, they do. I was offered a scan a couple of weeks ago on a Saturday morning. I couldn't do it. I did it on the Tuesday. But get the machinery and use it as many hours a day and as many days a week as you can.
Yes, because we've got this new treatment for things like Alzheimer's, but it's only if it's caught at the very early stages.
Yeah, exactly.
And we don't have enough MRI machines per head, so we're going to have to increase that capacity. And
that leads to productivity, and I think that's one of the things we do need. You know, we're going to talk about the economy, I think, as we go through the morning. And one of the things to get growth going is we need higher productivity. To get higher productivity, you need investment in capital. And every area, health needs productivity, so do all of our other industries.
Well, I don't know if productivity is going to be helped at all by the latest interest rate rise, Candice, in the Times. And we're being told, the Times says, interest rates are not expected to fall before the next general election.
Oh, this is a nightmare for the Conservatives. I mean, when is the latest possible point they can call an election? I think it's January 25, yes. Is it in his interest to just drag this out and hope that things start going his way so that he can achieve his 5 pledges? Because apparently interest rates might go even higher to about 6% before they're projected to fall. Or do you just call it next year? Just do it, just go for a May-June election, sort of argue what you need to argue instead of dealing with what we might be dealing with is a sluggish economy, high interest rates, soaring mortgage rates.
Blame it on Russia. I think that you had Charlie on earlier on, Charlie Rowley, and I think Charlie made a very eloquent defence of the government's position. And he also talked about the strategy, which Candice has said too, which is what the Prime Minister would like to say is, at some point early next year, on all my 5 indicators, all my 5 pledges, things are moving in the right direction. Now I need a mandate of my own. I want to be your Prime Minister. I want the country to choose me, vote for me, and I will then finish the work I've started. The problem is, economists are saying, and it's commentary on the interest rate rise yesterday, today is not the worst it's going to be. Only half of the pain from the interest rate rises is fed through the system yet. The second half is yet to come. So every month we go on, it gets worse for people.
So what would you do when would you call an election then?
I would think it's in the public interest and it's in the Conservative Party's interest for Rishi Sunak to call an election in October this year.
To give us something to vote for?
To give us
October this year?
Yeah, I'm saying if you were... I don't see there's any scenario in which I could advise the Prime Minister how to win. What you have to do is in the national interest. So in the national interest, you should let the country choose who the government is, because... The
problem with this, though, is right, people are fed up with the Conservatives, you get that.
Yeah.
But what is Labour... When it comes to these fundamental problems...
Give us an election and we'll show you. Give us an election and we'll show you. Give us the keys and we'll... Let us into number 10, we can fix it.
But you need... That's not enough, is it?
No, but I
And the problem is, and with all these interest rates rise, of course, Bank of England's independent anyway.
I know, but my advice to the Prime Minister would be, as leader of the Tory party, I'd say it's in the Tory party's interest to put the party out of this pain. They are drifting in government. Ministers are briefing against each other. There's no unity, no discipline. The Tory party will lose the next election. John Major understood he was handing over a country in a decent shape to Tony Blair. I remember there's a great story about John Major. He looked at the papers, then he looked at a picture of Tony Blair in the papers, and he just shook his head and said, I hope he knows what he's getting into. And I think the empathy, the human sympathy between Major and Blair was real, and Major handed over the country in a good shape.
What does Blair think now? What does Blair think about when we should have another election?
Oh, Blair thinks we should have a Labour government as soon as possible.
Does he like this Labour government?
He likes to. No, I saw Keir and Tony together on stage at his conference. The chemistry, you know, you two guys know you can't fake chemistry. You can't, when people are watching you talking together. Those two people had a really strong.
Really?
Yeah, no, it's really interesting. I'd not seen them together before, and they clearly talk all the time. And again,
So we would get
thing.
Blair again if we voted in.
No,
Starmer.
we'd get Starmer for the first time. Because remember, I say this to my younger colleagues, the Starmer government will be, if it gets elected, will be governing in the second quarter of the 21st century.
Gosh.
Blair was for the 20th century. You know, we're well into the 21st century now. We need new thinking and
yeah.
Obviously we can draw on wiser older people, but you know.
But Blair would have a guest
got...
bedroom in number 10.
There's always been lots of new thinking.
It's in number 11, that's what the Prime Minister
He
said.
changes his mind all the time.
Exactly. Well, what we've kind of got now is people who are sort of shifting with the wind a lot. I mean, I wouldn't say that either Rishi Sunak or Keir Starmer have these sort of high ideals. I mean, the two of them changed their position a lot on things. And just to go back to interest rates really briefly, you know, there is some economic thinking that actually raising interest rates isn't going to get inflation down anyway, because most of it is external factors. It's not caused by increased demand.
No.
So, I mean, this could just cause loads of needless pain. We have to see, though. We have to see if it does start coming down.
Yeah, no, that's a very fair point. Candice Holdsworth, John McTernan, thank you very much indeed.
You.
We'll see you a little bit later on.